everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
It was just a few years ago that Bill was at a DXpedition at Christmas Island. It's called his Kilo Hotel 6 Oscar. And he's also got two sons, William and John, and both of them are hams. They finished a very successful DXpedition to Christmas Island, and in a minute we'll play a video of it. The event took over a year to prepare and 7 days to accomplish. And just 3 weeks ago, that same team of three just finished up a DXpedition to Tahiti. And he's celebrating his 60th year as a ham radio operator. I like that.
Wow.
He's also served in the Navy as a communications specialist. And how about a big rousing round of applause here for Kilo Hotel 6 Oscar Bill Kendall. Give him a nice hand. Bill, I can't thank you enough. What's it like in Hawaii right now?
Well, somebody in your group asked me that question a few minutes ago, and you said it was 40 degrees where you are. Well, it's about 30 degrees here, but that's Celsius. So anyway, we're having a really nice sunny day here, and thank you all very much for letting me into your meeting tonight. I really enjoyed taking a look at your website, and I got a copy of your newsletter, so thank you for all the kind comments coming this way. And I might say right back to you guys, looks like you're really, really active in the area there with your Skywarn and all of your other ham activities, so it's really, really good to see that too. I'm originally from Minnesota, so your neighbor.
What got you to move out to Hawaii?
Well, it came as a job offer. I used to work for Ma Bell, as you probably all are familiar with that term. I see some seniors like myself in the audience there, so when I do say things like that, you will recognize the term, and you'll have to explain that to your younger people. Anyway, I got a job offer out here, and I've been doing radio work all my life, so it was just a continuation out here in the Pacific, and that was in 1985. So I've been on and off the island out here for almost longer than I lived in Minnesota now.
Bill, what was it like to get your ham radio license 60 years ago? I think that's about when they came out with a vacuum tube, wasn't it?
Well, my radio experience starts with a cast whisker on a piece of gallium diode material with my grandfather back in 1944 before our county became electrified. In those days, we listened to WCCO Clear Channel at night if we were lucky.
What kind of equipment did you have 60 years ago when you were a ham?
SX28 was my first radio receiver, and that was, I ran a 6146 tube, just a 75-watt oscillator, crystal controlled. So I started with a cat's whisker, and now I've ended up with the cat's meow. I have a software-defined radio.
Which one? Flex?
Yes, the 6700, and we took that on our Tahiti trip, and it really did an outstanding job for us.
You know, I saw those pictures of the Christmas Island trip, and you had one of those Electcraft radios, am I right?
Yes, I did, and unfortunately, lightning got the better of it in Minnesota 1 year ago, and took care of that, so that prompted me then to decide to go to the software-defined radio. So, yes, we had two small radios on that trip, only one on the last trip.
We had the designer of that radio as a guest here for our chapter. And I noticed when I was doing research on these DXpeditions, that seems to be the radio of choice for the DXpeditions, am I right?
Yes, it is. And I would only say, though, you know, it would depend on what the modes are that you're going to zero in on for your DXpeditions nowadays. One of the advantages of the software-defined radios, especially on this last trip that we took, we were able to decode bandwidths up to 4 or 5 kc, which you really can't do with most of the traditional transceivers. So that's some of the things that you have to take into account when you decide to go into the field.
Well, you were in the Navy. Tell me a
Well, most of it was classified until the Freedom of Information Act starts ticking at 60 years, so it just became available that I can say much of anything about it. But in 1958, the world situation was quite volatile, and I was first assigned after going through some radio training to a small island in the North Pacific, Adak Island, and I spent 2 years there without any leave or liberty. However, we did do our little jaunts off from that island on a weekly basis. So I covered most of the Pacific Islands in that 4 years of active duty, and it was quite interesting. So I was trained in 3 different languages in Morse code, so that'll give you some idea of what might have been going on out there.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What kind of equipment did you have on board the ship, and how long ago was this?
Well, we did different types of things. We had a small airstrip there, so we did some flying off the island, and also we did have a submarine port there. There was only about 300 sailors up there at that time. 10, 15 years later, during the Vietnam War, that particular facility expanded to over 10,000, so it grew significantly.
Oh, you've got a ham shack in Hawaii. Is there any, it would be interesting to find out, is there any difference having a shack there than having one in Minnesota? What would be the difference? What would be the differences?
Well, for instance, my antenna doesn't fall down every year when it gets full of ice, because that doesn't happen. But I missed my home station in Minnesota as a traditional ham up there. Of course, I had my 60-foot tower. Here I'm up 300 feet in the air with my antenna, but it's a very small antenna. I operate off of my apartment lanai with a 1 meter diameter loop antenna. And that performs quite well for me. So I send out, just to give you an idea how well it does perform, in the last 17 years I've lived in this apartment, I probably mail out about a little over 1,000 QSL cards a year.
Really? And how many bands does that antenna cover?
Right now I'm just covering 10 through 40.
10 through 40. Is there anyone out by you that has a hex beams?
Yeah, there's a couple of them, but most of the guys using that type are over on the Big Island, and they have a whole different propagation characteristic over there, even from us here. We're about 300 miles from that island, so the island propagations do vary out here.
Yeah, there's a couple of us here in the club that are looking at those hex beams, just kind of wondering what your perspective is on them. What do you think of them?
Well, I'm not really, I haven't been an antenna expert for quite a few years, and when I was in the business, that was with very small antennas for the cellular radio.
Okay, well, let's play the video. We've got a video of your Christmas Island DXpedition, and then we'll talk about that, okay?
Yes, please.
Okay, stand by, we'll play the video.
Bill, Will, and John are excited to present their DXpedition to Christmas Island. Bill had wanted to try a DXpedition for many years, and when his 2 sons agreed to join him, he started planning. Bill decided to go to Kiribati, also known as Christmas Island. He chose this location because of its remote area, but it's still relatively easy to get to, with Fiji Airlines flying there once a week. The Republic of Kiribati is made up of 33 coral atolls that stretch 2,000 miles east to west. Christmas Island is on the far east side, due south of Hawaii. It started July 4th, 2014 at Will's house in Leech Lake in Minnesota. All of the testing of their equipment was performed at Will's house in Leech Lake. Bill spent more than a year purchasing and acquiring equipment to have it shipped from Hawaii, where he lives, to Leech Lake for a test run. It took multiple phone calls and emails to the Communications Commission of Kiribati to secure the amateur radio license. Tango 32 Delta X-ray was assigned to them on February 13, 2015. After testing and packing was complete, all of it went back to Hawaii and sat in Bill's living room until the big day. Will and John joined up with Bill in Hawaii and left for Christmas Island on October 27, 2015. In Hawaii, while boarding Fiji Airlines, Bill's careful planning and packing paid off, as they did not have to repack any luggage. Of course, the most important thing to see was the equipment getting loaded. They crossed the date line while they were flying, and they arrived on Wednesday, the 28th of October in 2015. Now the fun begins. The Kiribati Customs area was small but efficient, and they were able to purchase their scuba diving license and fishing license there. The Christmas Island International Airport doesn't require much equipment to support the one flight a week schedule. The 4-mile trip from the airport to the Captain Cook Hotel took about 15 minutes. They were now 144 miles north of the equator, and the sun was intense but welcoming, especially to Will and John coming from Minnesota. They passed through one of the older villages on the island, the village of Banana. The staff of the Captain Cook Hotel welcomed them and brought them to their bungalows. The bungalows were roomy. John and Will shared one, while Bill shared his with the radios. Air conditioning in the bungalow rooms was an unexpected luxury. Bill decided to use 2 small, low-powered portable radios. They used a quarter-wave vertical antenna and a vertical dipole antenna. The 2 antennas did very well and were about 200 feet apart. The quarter-wave vertical remained tuned to 20 meters, while the vertical dipole was tuned to 12 meters. 12 meters was open almost all the time during daylight. 20 meters did best from about 1 hour before sunrise and closing about 2 hours later, opening again about 2 hours before sunset, going well into the evening. Because they were low-power stations, CW was the most successful. When 20 meters would fade, they then went to JT965 and were quite successful with that mode. They were operating the radios for 15 hours a day over 4 days, and other time was spent exploring the island and the waters around it. Most nights they were the only 3 guests in the hotel restaurant. The food was great. Even though the staff did not speak much English, they made Bill, Will, and John feel right at home. The hotel staff surprised Bill with an early birthday party, singing happy birthday in English and Gilbertese. They had 3 nights of music, singing, and dancing in the hotel lounge put on by local talents. Even Bill, who lives in Hawaii, had to admit that this was some of the best hula dancing he had ever seen. It was very hot. Night temps dropped to a low of 80 degrees Fahrenheit and daytime temperatures around 85 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit with a humidity of 85%. So it felt like 100 degrees all of the time. It didn't encourage much daytime activity, and huge thunderstorms were present all the time, but very localized. They had 85% sunshine and light winds varying around 5 miles per hour depending on the position of the thunder cells around them. Christmas Island is known for their bird sanctuaries and their bonefish fishing. Will and John went fishing and caught some bonefish, blue trevally, and queenfish. color of the fish and coral made for some spectacular diving for John. It would take around 1.5 hours to travel 20 miles for visits to other parts of the island. Roads were very poor, and sometimes they were driving in 2 feet of water. The hotel CEO treated them to a great picnic lunch featuring local favorites such as barbecue chicken, rice, local breads, and of course, fresh coconut water. While exploring the island, they found some relics from the extensive atomic bomb testing done in the 1950s and 60s. One of the reasons Bill chose the Captain Cook Hotel was because the hotel had its own generator. Bill, Will, and John agreed that their DXpedition was a huge success, with over 3,000 contacts made in over 90 countries, all in only 4 days of operation. After everything was packed up, they spent the rest of the last day on the beach. On the flight back to Hawaii, they flew over Pearl Harbor, where Bill volunteers once a week on the Missouri. Aloha in 73. Bill, Kilo Hotel 6 Oscar Oscar. Will, Whiskey 0 Zulu Romeo Juliet. John, November 0 Papa Juliet Victor.
Who put that together?
My son did, and that was my granddaughter that narrated it for us.
That's a great production. I've always dreamt about being the only 3 people in a hotel, and having about 20 workers for every 3 guests. That's a great hotel.
Well, it was pretty basic, and actually it was an abandoned military base, and it was called Main Camp. That's what they call it on the island, because it's not a very big place, and it's not a very busy place. And it was located right on the end of the runway, but not to be concerned, because there was only 1 flight in and out a week.
Do they let private planes come in there?
Yes, but we didn't see any.
Well, I'm kind of interested in the island. The only electricity was in the hotel. Am I correct?
That's correct. The compound itself, if you could call it a hotel, the compound itself supplied its own electrical energy there. And it was 120 volts, which is quite unusual in the Pacific. Most of the stations in the Pacific and most of the islands run on 220.
Well, I'm interested to find out. I know it's very expensive to live in Hawaii, but it's got to be outrageous on that island. What did it cost you guys to spend a week out there?
Well, actually, it wasn't very expensive. I think it wasn't anyway. It cost us about $1,200 each to get airfare. Fiji Air, which has now recently discontinued its service to the island, did a drop-off there on their way it was a drop-off between Honolulu and Fiji. So once a week they would drop down and let off about 6 fishermen that were fishing enthusiasts and a couple of radio guys like ourselves.
That's just amazing. How did you pick this island? What was the criteria?
Well, for a senior, it had to be easy to get to. I wasn't too keen on going in on a Zodiac through the surf to get to the shore. So it was convenient to get to, and we could get service there, and we could live indoors in an air-conditioned room.
Well, this was like field day on steroids. I think I put that in the newsletter. It took you a year to put this together.
Yes, the difficult part of planning any of these Pacific islands, of course, is arranging transportation, and that was relatively straightforward. Next is finding accommodations, and thirdly is getting licensed. We were licensed through the Republic of Kiribati, and their capital was on Tarawa, about 1,000 miles to the west of the island that we wanted to go to. Now, there's two Christmas Islands when you do the Google stuff, and you'll find one of them located in the Indian Ocean, which is administered by Australia. And since Christmas Island that we were on is now administered by the Republic of Kiribati, we had to go through a different licensing agency, and it cost us $200 for that license.
Was it good for a week for $200?
Well, actually, they gave it to us for a year.
Oh, okay. All right. And you packed up all of that equipment, and it was only 50 pounds. That was your radios?
No. The 50 pounds you might have read somewhere was per luggage itself. We had 200 pounds total.
Okay, I knew you were skinny, but I thought 50 pounds with clothes and radios, I'm not that skinny. What did you use for antennas? Did you use a beam?
We had a full wave, a full quarter wave vertical on 20, and then we had a switchable vertical dipole for 10 through 20. And our plan was to be able to run out and make the connection changes for the switchable dipole, vertical dipole, but that didn't work out too good because there was frequent, very, very intense thunderstorms. About every 2 hours, one would pass over the island. So that made it a little bit of a problem. 17 meters, for some reason, was the major player for us on the islands. And so with that particular type of experience, that modified our antenna selections when we went to Tahiti here 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, tell me a little about Tahiti.
Tahiti, being a much different environment, they have about 6 planes going into Tahiti from the U.S. mainland every week, and they all arrive also on Saturdays. So being the population and the location and the popularity of the island for tourists made it, we had a lot of choices for lodging. We did pick a house to rent that was up on the side of the mountain on the north face, and we picked that because we couldn't find really suitable accommodations near the water, and it turned out to play for us quite well. And the difference in antenna this time, because we were only going to be a one-station operation, is we took a magnetic loop for supporting meters, and then a switchable dipole, vertical dipole for the 10 through 20 meter band. So we were able to now switch our antenna selections from inside the house, and also again putting up with all the frequent thunderstorms. We had to just put up with the noise of that and securing the windows and doors as they blew through. It was quite a situation with the weather. I was quite surprised on that.
Bill, there's no question that you love ham radio, and you can see it in your smile. You can see it in your history. What gives you that love? What makes amateur radio so exciting for you?
Wow, that's a kind of a hard question. I guess it's turning on the radio when conditions.
I don't get easy questions.
I guess it's what we all experience when we're in a low part of the sunspot cycle, and all of a sudden here out in the middle of the Pacific, I get South Africa, which is the counterpoise, the farthest point on the earth for our stations. And when they come through about once a week or once every 2 or 3 weeks, even when when the conditions are poor, it's that type of excitement that keeps me lit.
Wow, that's amazing. Why don't you come to Oshkosh, Wisconsin and do one here so we can meet you?
I would love that. And if I get back to the mainland, I'll keep you guys on the list, and thank you for having me tonight.
What's next on your list? Where are you going next?
It's a secret, but we do have something in the works for maybe next year. And again, it won't be anything really, really rare. And you know, we did make 3,000 contacts on this last trip as well as on the first trip, and it kept us pretty busy. But we didn't break any records for sure.
I'll tell you, I've had so much fun researching DXpeditions over these last few weeks. I saw a picture of a guy sitting out on a rock, and he took a boat out to the rock. He had a Honda generator on it, and he put up a tent, and he's out there working on the rock. I thought, that's unbelievable. Unbelievable. I can't thank you enough. Let's open it up for questions. Is there anyone here that has a question for Bill? Wake up, everybody.
I would like to extend an invitation to all you, if you do come out to Hawaii, to look me up, and we'll have an eyeball, and I can invite you to a coffee with a bunch of the guys that I meet with every Tuesday morning.
Wow, that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. All right, more questions? Bill, thank you so much for being with us here.
Well, thanks a lot.
Okay, my friend, I'll see you later.
Bye-bye. Aloha.